Who does Field Yates have the New Orleans Saints drafting with his latest NFL mock draft 3.0? Ladies and gentlemen, how about this turtleneck on Mel Kiper Jr.? My God, I cannot believe what I'm seeing here. Very classy, very cutesy. All right, so we're going to look at this from the Saints' perspective. We're going to go through Fields' choice for the Saints at number 9. We're also going to look at some other mock drafts where they have who they have the Saints taking and who they have around the Saints. Now, it's important to remember, the way I like to do it is I don't like to look at one singular mock draft because they're very different. What I like to look at is a consensus. So you look at like 5 or 6 mock drafts, and then you figure out, are any of them similar? Are they all the same position? You know, like, for example, if we looked at 10 mock drafts and every single mock draft had either the Saints taking Luther Burden or Tet McMillan, then you know, at that point, you know, okay, well, it doesn't really matter which player. We can assume the Saints are taking a wide receiver, right? So I like to look at it that way, look at it by position. Now, this year is very interesting from the Saints side of things because the Saints have a brand new everything. They have a brand new offense with Kellen Moore. They have a brand new defense with DC unnamed. I would assume Brandon Staley, but who knows? Regardless, the Saints are going to have to be drafting players to fit these new systems. They also have a ton of position of need. So if you say, well, draft the best available. Well, more than likely, the Saints will have the best available or their choice at multiple positions that are high-need positions. So this draft is going to be insane. Having a top 10 pick makes it even crazier. So let's go ahead and get into this one. Let's just real quick recap. Fields has the Titans going Travis Hunter.
Little Wendy.
We go immediately into a Wendy's ad. Unbelievable. First, I mean, just right off the jump. Boom. I'm staring at a damn double juicy burger. Hey, by the way, you know why Wendy's has square patties? It's because they don't cut corners. That's true. That's marketing for you. So the Titans go Travis Hunter, number 1 overall. Then we have the Browns going Abdul Carter, number 2. 3, we have the Giants going Cam Moore. The Giants would be thrilled if this is how it played out. The Patriots go Will Campbell. All right, so Will Campbell is shooting up the board. So Will Campbell, don't look at me like that, Mel. So Will Campbell was a guy who, for a while, was going either 10 or 11 or 12. And we talked about him. If he was there, would you draft him if you're the Saints and move him to guard? Because he has some length issues. So it would be hard to imagine him going at 4 because of those length issues, because I don't know if he is set to play tackle in the NFL. Maybe he ends up doing it, but we'll see. Then we got 5, Mason Graham to the Jags. Mason Graham's another one who's shooting up draft boards. So we talked about Mason Graham going to the Saints at 9, and now he's in the top 5. So you see how volatile this can be. 6, the Raiders go Shedeur Sanders. The Raiders would be thrilled if this happened. Then we have the Jets taking Mykel Williams. Mykel Williams is a guy who's mocked in quite a few places to the Saints. They're certainly interested in him. The Panthers at 8 go Jalen Walker. All right, now let's go to the New Orleans Saints.
Have the 8th overall pick. Let's stay in the division. Is with the 9th overall pick. The now Kellen Moore-led New Orleans Saints are on the clock here, Mel. And with the 9th pick in the draft, the mock 3.0 presented to you by Yates and Company, the New Orleans Saints take Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. All right, let me explain myself. And this one might take a little bit more than every.
So Tet is a guy who makes total sense. The problem is, or not the problem is, but we have to watch out is how he will be graded. So if you had asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said, yeah, he's for sure going to be top 10, for sure going to be, a guy that the Saints could get at 9. I've seen mocks within the last 24 hours that have him sliding to like 20. They have him sliding big time. So he's a guy who he could be. You have your risers and fallers throughout the draft process. He seems right now to be a faller, but with the combine and all that coming up, physically, he's impressive. So he could kind of solidify himself as a top 10 pick. I would not mind this pick at all. The Saints desperately need playmakers. They desperately need a bigger body receiver. They desperately need someone to pair with Chris Olave. That is not Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed, someone who can be more of that physically dominating wide receiver. Tet is that. The question is, is he, if you draft him 9th overall, you are doing that with the belief that he can become one of the best 10 receivers in the NFL. Like where the Saints are, you can't go get your next, Brandon Cooks. Like, you have to get a guy who's going to be an all-pro dominator, number one kind of guy. I don't want to say Michael Thomas because Michael Thomas was the offensive player of the year, but closer to Michael Thomas than Brandon Cooks.
Every other pick up to this point for this reason. Mel, this is going to be a combination of addressing needs for the Saints and also recognizing where my board is at, and finally commenting on what I think is important for New Orleans to do right now. The Saints are, as everybody who follows the NFL closely knows, in a very precarious salary cap spot. This is a team that has pushed money forward and forward and forward. Other teams do that. Philadelphia does it. Worked pretty well for them, right? They're the Super Bowl champions. The Saints are picking 9th overall. It's time for New Orleans to at some point decide, do we want to reset and eventually find a way back to building a sustained product, or do we want to just keep pushing things forward and go for more mediocrity? It's time for...
Currently, what he is saying is just loud fart noises. It means absolutely nothing. Like, we know all that. All that is happening. They're picking 9th overall. Regardless of whatever he said, they need to take the best pick possible at 9. What that has to do with pushing the cap forward or kicking the can or being mediocre or going for broke or rebuilding or resetting or whatever, doesn't matter. The 9th overall pick is what matters here.
For them to do the former, except that it's a time to reset. You've got a 36-year-old, the youngest head coach in all of the NFL now. Let him grow into a head coach for 5 years. Let this be a rebuild. I understand that sucks for fans, Mel, but it's the right thing for them to get back to their winning ways and go to Super Bowls, not just host them like they did.
What I would like to know is what the pick would be if they did the opposite. What would the pick be if they said, no, we're not doing all that. We're trying to win a Super Bowl now. What's the pick then? Because if the pick doesn't change, which I don't think it would, then all of this monologue right here is useless.
Did a great job of doing this past week. Tetairoa McMillan is a player that I think deserves to go in the first 10 or 12 selections. He would help New Orleans at a position that by the end of the season was a glaring need. Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed missed extensive time last year due to a concussion and also a knee injury for Shaheed. So I think it's enough of a need, enough of a value, and it's a position where the NFL values it tremendously that you take a young T-Mac, 6'5", 210-pound wide receiver, and let him be a fixture for the next decade in your offense.
All right, so I think wide receiver is one of the most volatile positions you can take. Wide receiver and defensive back, because the great ones are so few and far between, and you can find the mediocre ones kind of everywhere, right? This is the pick where if you do take a defensive back or a wide receiver and you miss, it could really set you backwards. Even if you draft an average wide receiver, even if you draft just a relatively average-ish, almost to above average, instead of getting like a dominator, instead of getting a all-pro at whatever position, that's the thing the Saints cannot do. The Saints cannot end up, I mean, these guys are more busts, but they can't end up with a Kevin White. They can't end up with a Darius Hayward-Bay. They can't end up with those guys. If you're going to take McMillan here, you have to believe that he can be the next Jamar Chase, the next Justin Jefferson, the next top guy, top receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, the word polarizing is going to come up with a lot of players as we get into this portion of the draft field.
Agreed.
And he's one of those guys. We were with Matt Miller yesterday. Matt said it's a major reach. He wouldn't do it. I don't think it's a reach. He does. Yeah, the bottom line is you're going to get a lot of that now because there's going to be mixed opinions. And polarizing means, hey, some guys think he can be really good. Even Matt said, hey, I see a little Drake London in him. Matt's Mr. Comp. Matt's going to comp everybody to a player. And Matt's
good example. Like, if he's Drake London, you can't take him 9. Drake London's a fine player, okay? Top 30 wide receiver, but you don't take him at 9. If you could get an all-pro level anything else, you've got to do that. So if he's a volatile player, a maybe a reach, maybe value, maybe this, maybe that. I don't know if the Saints are in the business of maybe right now.
It was a reach, but Drake London went pretty high, and Drake London's a guy physically. Tetairoa McMillan kind of looks that part. You throw it up, you think he's covered, he'll go get it. I think when you look at Will Johnson, another polarizing player field, cornerback out of Michigan. Yep. Will Johnson, we talk about arm length for Will Campbell. The Wills, arm length for Will Campbell, speed for Will Johnson. What's that 40 time going to be? If he runs 4.45, I think he goes pretty high.
Agreed.
You think about this would be a good spot for him. If he runs 4.53, he's going to drop a little bit. So that the difference in 40 time for Will Johnson is going to be crazy.
It's crazy because it's really not that big of a difference. You're talking about tenths of a second, but taking a cornerback in the top 10 who runs a 4.53 coming out of college, that is. I would assume that would have to be the slowest cornerback drafted in the top 10 in a long time. Critical,
and I think if he runs well, he deserves to be up here in this spot. And I think that could be a possibility. And McMillan would drop a little further down. But if he's there, and you still have a receiver need. There's no question you have that need at wide receiver. So I would have no issue at all with Tetairoa McMillan going here to the Saints.
If it's out of the two, I would rather Tetairoa McMillan, because I think there's probably a higher ceiling. Like Will Johnson, if he's Paulson Adebo, even if he's Marshawn Lattimore, it's like, is that impactful enough for what the Saints want to do right now? Or do you try and find that version of a player somewhere else? Like, would you rather have Marshawn Lattimore or the Marshawn Lattimore comparison at the edge or defensive tackle? I would take the comparison on the defensive line. So, that's kind of how you have to look at where the Saints are. And the Saints are in an interesting spot because they're drafting 9th, true. But if there's 2 quarterbacks going, which there probably will be, the Saints are nowhere near where they could get those 2 guys. So the Saints are kind of getting the 7th pick, the 7th player off their board.
We were talking about that Will Johnson thing months ago, Will. I mean, Greeny almost lost him. Remember, Greeny was like, what do you mean Will Johnson might drop out of the top 10? I said, Greeny, this is what scouts are debating right now, is what's the history in if he ran a 4.52? What's the history in a 4.52 cornerback or wide receiver, for that matter, going in the top 10? It's if there is examples of it, there aren't many, at least not recently. So something to keep in mind. I know some people think we agonize over the wrong things. We're doing our best, though, to give you the most accurate reflection of how we think the draft will shake out.
And real quick, Phil, I'll give you
all right, so immediate person that came to my mind was D. Milner out of Alabama. And I have no idea what his 40 was, but I remember at the time, D. Milner was supposed to be a really, 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 really highly touted cornerback. But the thing was he could only play zone, and he could only do it on one side of the field. And it was like, he was great at that. Saban hit him well. But so I wouldn't be surprised if that's who was slow. I wonder if Mel will give us the example
from last year. I love TJ Tampa, right?
Yeah. Yep.
TJ Tampa dropped to the 4th round because he ran with 4.52, 4.54 in that area. Yeah. They didn't have the 4.45 40. So heck of a player. Now the question is, and they know they got a good player in TJ Tampa, by the way. They stole him in the 4th round. Internally, they really like this guy. He's going to be a factor with slot corner, could even be a safety, could even be an outside corner. He's going to have to define what his role is because we know he can tackle. We know he's got great ball skills and instincts. TJ Tampa is going to be a really good pick, and he was a 4th round steal. But the reason they dropped instead of being a 2nd round pick into the 4th round is because of that 40 time. So if you don't think it's important, look at TJ Tampa. If you don't think it's important, keep an eye on Will Johnson, because that is going to be a major factor in whether he's in line to be the 5th, 6th, 7th pick, or he drops in, as you said, field in that 15 range.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting again.
All right. So then the Bears go Kelvin Banks Jr.
Huge news.
An option for the Saints. Wendy's again. So I was wrong. D. Milner can absolutely fly. He ran a 4.37 40. Didn't matter. He was out of the league, I think, in 4 years or 5 years. So he wasn't slow. That wasn't the problem. I guess he wasn't very good. But let's take a look at some other mock drafts here, like we talked about. So this is Pro Football Focus. Pro Football Focus has here it is. This is as of, I think, the 17th. Yeah, February 17th. So they have Travis Hunter going first as well. They have Abdul Carter going second as well. They have the Giants going Shador So that's what I'm talking about. So now we have a first flip-flop between Shedeur and Cam Ward. But this tells you the Giants are going quarterback if it's available. All right, this has Will Campbell going 4. So that's similar between Fields' mock draft. The Jaguars, Mason Graham at 5. Similar. Now, how about this? Big difference. Now, all of a sudden, Ashton Jeanty is going 6. All right, Ashton Jeanty going 6th. He wasn't even in Fields' top 10. Cam Ward dropping to 7. This would be crazy if the Raiders didn't take Cam Ward. This is nuts. If the Raiders don't take Cam Ward, I'd be absolutely shocked. They have the PFF has the Panthers going McMillan, then the Saints going edge James Pierce, who is the edge out of Tennessee. Bears going Kelvin Banks, so that's similar as well. 49ers Josh Simmons going a tackle there. Will Johnson goes to 12. Okay, Tyler Warren 14. Mykel Williams, I've seen him mocked to the Saints quite a few times. He goes 16. Jalen Walker to Seattle, hell of a player. And then Egbuka is climbing. Egbuka was the second-round pick before the last couple of weeks, and now he's up into the first round. Luther Burden drops to 25 in this one. Okay. Nick Scourton, I've seen him mocked to the Saints a little bit. I think if the Saints trade down, maybe he could be somebody. Kenneth Grant. So Kenneth Grant's fallen big time. Kenneth Grant was a guy who I've seen Kenneth Grant mocked higher than Mason Graham. So they're the two interior linemen from Michigan. I've seen those flip-flop. So the fact that they have Graham 5 and Grant 30th is pretty wild. Now this is Daniel Jeremiah. Daniel Jeremiah has he's got Abdul Carter 1, Cam Ward 2. See what I'm saying? Like, some of this is nuts. Travis Hunter 3. This would be surprising. If the Giants don't go quarterback, that'd be very surprising. So all 3 mocks right now have the Patriots going Will Campbell. Now that's pretty strong. And all 3 have Mason Graham going to the Jaguars. So again, pretty strong indicator there. Shedeur going to the Raiders. Tyler Warren going to the Jets. Damn, Tyler Warren jumping all the way up to 7th. That's wild. That seems high. Jalen Walker going to the Panthers. So the Panthers have gone like 3 different positions. Daniel Jeremiah has the Saints going Mike Green. Is Mike Green even in the top 10 of this one? Mike Green, okay, 15. All right, so Mike Green is 15th to the Falcons in the PFF one. All right. Edge rusher out of Marshall. I would hate that. I mean, he might be great, but he just seems like the small school development. I don't know. I need to do a little more research on Mike Green. I wasn't watching a lot of Marshall last year. Kelvin Banks. So all of them currently have Kelvin Banks going to Chicago. Will Johnson goes 11 here. Walter Nolan to the Cowboys. Mykel Williams. Okay, Kenneth Grant in this one goes 16th. Okay, look at this. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. In this one, McMillan drops all the way to 19. This would be a crazy pick if the Bucs went McMillan to go. I mean, I guess he replaces Godwin, but McMillan to 19. That's a big drop. Jeanty to 21. I mean, you go Jeanty at 7 in the PFF one, and then he goes 7 in the PFF. Oh, no, wait. Who had him going 7? Where did I even see that? Now I'm thrown off here. Oh, he went 6 in the PFF one. Good. He goes 6 or 21st. Let's see here. Then Egbuka goes 25th in this one. Okay. And then in Walters, so this is Walter Football. He's been the most accurate draft analyst for quite a few years now. His released on the 17th. So he goes Cam Ward first overall. Then he goes Shedeur second overall. Okay. Travis Hunter third. Abdul Carter fourth. Yeah, if Abdul Carter is there, the Patriots are not passing on him. Kenneth Grant. Okay, see what I'm talking about? So Mason, I mean, this shows you the volatility of the draft. But PFF has Kenneth Grant 30th. And Walter has Kenneth Grant 5th. Fields, everyone has Mason Graham going 5th. And not only does Walter not have Mason Graham 5th, he's got the other Michigan interior lineman better. It shows you like the draft is just so hard to hit. And this is why. You know, like you got experts, quote unquote draft experts. They can't even agree within 20 picks of players. Then the Raiders go McMillan here. Kind of interesting to go McMillan without a quarterback, but you know, whatever. 7. Mason Graham goes 7. Okay. Mikael Williams goes 8. And then the Saints go Will Johnson here. I don't know. I understand the thought with Lattimore, but I think there's just so many pressing needs. Like I just can't see the Saints passing on filling some of those needs to go with a defensive back. The Bears, okay, so this is the first one that doesn't have Kelvin Banks. Isn't that his name, Kelvin Banks? Yeah. It has Tyler Booker, but all of them have the Bears addressing the offensive line. Will Campbell drops to 11 here. 12 goes Genty to the Dolphins. Kelvin Banks goes Genty goes 12 to the Cowboys. Banks goes 13 to the Dolphins. Okay, then we got Pierce drops to the Falcons. The Falcons have pretty much all taken edge rushers there. Okay, I've seen Thomas drafted to the Saints. He's falling a little bit. So that's kind of where we're at right now on mocks. We're going to keep updating this. You know, we'll keep doing mock videos throughout. We're getting close to draft time. Once we get all of our assistant coaches, once we get the staff figured out, that we can go full in on mock season, because then you know, like, okay, we know the system, we know the coaches, we know what they might want. They may even do interviews. The combine's coming up, so it's almost that time of the year, ladies and gentlemen. But let me know in the comments below, who do you want the Saints to draft? Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.